Yes, invite us all. You guys, my name is Pam Ferguson. I'm the chair of High Noon, which is the Hayden Island Neighborhood Network, which is our neighborhood association. And I'm so thankful that you guys are all here tonight. Thank you for being here. I wanted to kind of do a show of hands of the different housing groups that we have here. How many people are from JBMI? Woo! JBMI, yay, all right. How many people are from PROS? Woo! We do have a PROS representative in the room. Thank you, Navarre. Thanks for being here tonight. How about Tomahawk Island Floating Homes? Anybody? How about West Hayden Island Floating Homes? Yay, West Hayden Island. Thank you for being here. Yay. How about that Hayden Island Manufactured Home Community and RV Park? Thanks for being out. Thanks for coming out, gang. Appreciate you. Who am I missing? How about Marina River House? Anybody? How about the Waterside?
River House.
River House. Yay. Okay, Marty. And what about how about Waterside? We already said Waterside. Yay. Okay.
Lotus Isle Homes.
Lotus Isle Homes. Thank you for being here.
Island Cove.
And Island Cove Floating Homes. All right. Did we miss anybody? Anybody off the island? I think we have a person from Bend here tonight. Yay! We have Bend is represented. Yay!
Battleground.
Battleground is represented. All right, very good. Now, we appreciate you being here. Now, what I'm just going to talk about this for a second. We threw some papers at you as you checked in. We have this green paper here, which is what High Noon has identified the 8 main issues that we have with the IVRP project. And we've kind of condensed those issues on this green piece of paper. We also gave you 2 ways to comment tonight. One way is very remedial. You fill out this cute little white form and you leave it with Ellen or I at the end of the night and we will submit it for you. The other more sophisticated way is to use this cute little barcode and give your comments, put your comments into JCA, and they will submit them for you as well. So there's 2 different ways to comment. Anybody have any questions on that?
Everybody have one?
Oh yeah, does anyone need any others? We'll have some at the reception table as well, so. You guys, without further ado, I'd like to turn it over. We're very, very lucky tonight to have a facilitator that is so knowledgeable and so experienced. He is, when you go on his website, there's a million different things he's been involved in, and of course I like his main name is citizen activist, which is good, which is exactly what we need. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Chris Smith. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pam. So I am not from the island. I live downtown, but I know a little bit about the island because when I was on Planning Commission, I got to grapple with both the West Hayden Island Marine Terminal, which is the project where I got to meet Pam for the first time, and then a little bit later on, the idea of a propane terminal across the harbor from West Hayden Island. I was a no on both of those, just in case you were not sure. So I had a little bit of chance to learn about the island. I am part of an organization called No More Freeways, and we're the lead organization opposing the Rose Quarter Freeway expansion. So we've learned a little bit about how to fight freeways. And No More Freeways, along with 35 other organizations, is part of the Just Crossing Alliance. Let me talk a little bit about the Alliance. Get my clicker here. So we're 36 environmental, transportation, land use, environmental justice organizations. And we're looking for the most equitable and sustainable outcomes possible from this project. And our idea of possible is probably different than the project's idea of possible. We can talk about that. And High Noon is a member of the Just Crossing Alliance. And here's a bunch of logos of members, some of which you may recognize. How many of you were around for the CRC? All right, so let's let go of the trauma.
I don't think we'll ever get over it.
So to remind you what the CRC was about was very similar to what we're facing now. I mean, this is basically a rewarmed CRC, Columbia River Crossing. It went a little further north in terms of the transit component, and they were originally talking about 10 or 12 lanes. Right now we seem to be talking about 8 or 10, so that feels like maybe a little bit of progress. And some of the key ideas are the same, like the fact that the steel bridge is really the bottleneck for transit. It won't be up here in the project area, but the bottlenecks at the steel bridge will impact what we can do with transit here in the project area. And they did manage to get a permit from the Coast Guard then for 116 feet of river clearance, which is the same permit they're looking for now with about the same process. We can get into that. So fast forward about 10 years, and we have what's now branded as the Interstate Bridge Replacement. Even though the bridge is about 1 mile, the project's about 5 miles. You know, the name doesn't mention those other 4 miles of freeway expansion that are part of this. But there are 6 purpose and need statements that are essentially the same ones as during the CRC. So seismic remediation, not something we oppose. We're good with that. Bike and pedestrian paths, great. Public transportation, great. Safety, sure. We know that when you have 3 lanes in each direction with no shoulders, you're going to have safety issues. So we think that's perfectly fair to address. And then we get into the things that maybe we don't see eye to eye on. Freight movement, yes, goods and services have to get to market. We understand that. But let's be honest and remember that 90% of the vehicles using the bridge are cars, not trucks. So that gets us down to the last purpose and need bullet, which is 138,000 cars a day that they say are going to go to 188,000 if we don't do anything. We don't agree with that. For this project, they have pasted on additional lenses, quote unquote, of equity and climate, which if those were real would be great, but they are just a veneer. When we get underneath, there's really not a lot of change. So in the view of JCA, the sort of the original sin of this project is bundling the 4 good things with lots more space for traffic, which we know has lots of impacts on the community that we're not so thrilled about. Okay, so first acronym, MLPA, Modified Locally Preferred Alternative. So this is part of the NEPA, National Environmental Policy Act process, the way that the federal government says we have to evaluate environmental harms. And at the end of the CRC, we had the locally preferred alternative. They had, they started out with 30 some alternatives. They narrowed it down to 4, which they took into the EIS back 2009 to 2013. They came out with the preferred version. What IVR has done is take that preferred version and just modify it a little bit. We can talk about what the modifications are. They're not that significant. It's mostly the same project. But to look at the picture of what's going on here, so the project goes from Victory Boulevard in Portland all the way up to 4th Plain and SR 500 in Vancouver. That's the 5-mile extent. The bridge is 1 mile in the middle. So the Marine Drive interchange will get blown out completely and replaced. In the CRC, they were going to seismically retrofit the Harbor Bridge. Now they're saying they're going to replace it because it's 10 years older. And you see they're really replacing it with about 4 different structures. So there's a light rail bridge, there's the freeway bridge with some ramps branching off, and then there's an arterial connection, which we'll come back to because that's important for you guys, that will also have the bike ped path on it. And then you get a great big honking structure across Hayden Island, including a transit station, so yay transit. That transit station will be at least 30 feet in the air, so get your walking shoes on or get ready to use the elevator. Then we have the bridge itself, which will have either 4 lanes in each direction or 5 lanes in each direction, depending on where they land for the final EIS. Then a whole bunch of ramps rebuilt in Vancouver. There'll be a waterfront transit station, and that one will be at least 100 feet in the air. For bikes and pedestrians, they have a corkscrew that you can sort of see there that you would expect it to go up or down if you wanted to get on or off the active transportation path in Vancouver, so that'll be fun. And then we have a few more interchanges. The transit connection goes as far as Evergreen, which is about where the Vancouver Library is. If you're more familiar with downtown Vancouver than I am, I honestly don't spend a ton of time there, been there a few times. And then the freeway keeps going to, let's see, Mill Plain, Fourth Plain, there's one other one in there I'm forgetting. So that's the basics of what we're building here. So we'll see a video flyover, which is impressive at how much land it takes up. But we'll get to that in a little bit. Okay, so now let's talk about the document. So they had prepared an EIS last time around. In fact, they did it 3 times because their first design, the expert says, was unbuildable. The second design, they were planning to build a 95-foot bridge, and the Coast Guard said, no, you have to do 116, so they got to redesign it again. So we got three final EISs last time around, and the Washington legislature pulled the plug on funding. So they're doing what's called a supplemental EIS. So they're taking the old EIS and basically updating it. So they're not starting from scratch. In particular, they're not introducing new alternatives, which our friend Dave here has a model of the tunnel in the back. That would be a different alternative that they don't really want to hear about. But these are all the chapters of the EIS. It is about, including the appendices and technical reports, it's about 12,500 pages. I have at least flipped through every page on my iPad. But the big issues are chapter 3, which are the environmental impacts. So that's where they tell you what this thing is going to do to everything from transportation, obviously, to climate, to the river ecosystems, wetlands, all that good stuff. I would say it's worth reading the executive summary, which is about 70 pages, because that really gives you a picture of what's going on here. So if you need some help falling asleep at night, go grab that executive summary, take a look. What do they think they're deciding? So right now we have the draft supplemental EIS. That's the period where they collect public comments. That's what we're in right now until November 18th. So they're going to get thousands of comments. I hope a lot of them will be from you guys. I think Pam wants 500 from 899. So that's your goal, is 500. But the project thinks they're deciding are what kind of bridge. The CRC was going to be a double-deck bridge. They're looking at 3 different alternatives. The double deck from the CRC, a single deck, which has the advantage of being not quite as tall, so the grades wouldn't be as steep, but it'll be a lot wider, so that's a trade-off. And then a single level that would have a lift section, because until they get the Coast Guard to say they don't have to do the 178 feet that we have today, they still need to keep the possibility of a lift in there. They don't want to do that. They will do everything they can to not do that. And if you remember from last time, everything they have to do meant buying out the upstream river users who might want to put things under the bridge. Last time around, they negotiated a payment of $86 million. I'm betting it'll be north of $100 million this time. We'll see. They still haven't concluded that deal, so until they get that deal, they have to keep the lift bridge in there. 1 or 2 auxiliary lanes, so the 3 through lanes, and then there'll either be 1 or 2 additional lanes going through the project area. We're rooting for 1. We're really rooting for 0, but within their context, if there are 2 choices, we prefer 1. There's a question of whether or not they have a ramp onto C Street in Vancouver. I don't really have a dog in that fight. Vancouver City Council can weigh in on that and their representatives. They're talking about shifting the bridge a little bit west, which they seem to think has advantages. That obviously, again, that's in Vancouver, so after you get across the river, they want to shift it a little bit, or want to consider shifting a little bit west. That will take out a few more properties, including at least 1 apartment building if they do that. So again, that's probably a Vancouver City Council issue. Should say that to understand the impact on the island, they're going to build this bridge to the west of the current bridges, get the new bridge built, and then take out the old bridges. There are historic preservationists who want to maintain part of the old bridges. There's a whole separate process on historic preservation called Section 106, I think, and they have a public comment period for that going as well. Just Crossing Alliance is not weighing in on that. There are good preservationist organizations that are at the table for that. So we're going to stick to our transportation bidding. And then again, Vancouver issue is, do they have park and rides? Now, In Portland, we have a rule that basically says we don't put park and rides in Central City. Vancouver, I guess they think is a different case because there are people who will come to downtown Vancouver in order to get to downtown Portland. I guess that makes them a satellite city. I don't know. I would not want park and rides in my downtown. I'd much rather have apartment buildings for people who will ride that transit. But again, we're not really in the middle of that fight. Well, some of our land use organization members definitely have opinions on that, but it's not a main thing we're looking at. Okay, so what are the issues here in the island? And I left the question mark, and I apologize, I have not read the green sheet, so I don't know the list of 8. But obviously visual impacts are a huge thing, and we'll look at some slides that begin to show that a little bit, although the project has been careful to hide a lot of the impacts. The partial interchange, has everybody heard of the partial interchange? No, okay, so let's take a minute and explain that. So right now, you have a full interchange on the island, right? You can get on I-5 and go north, you can get on I-5 and go south. Coming home, you can get onto the island from either direction. What they propose to keep the footprint of the interchange a little bit smaller is that you only have an interchange in one direction, and that direction is to the north. So that means if you're coming from Vancouver, you can get straight off and go shop and get straight back on and go back to Vancouver. If you're on the island and want to go to Portland, you can't do that directly. You will have to go over the arterial bridge and then get on or off at the Marine Drive interchange on the Portland side. And we have a video in a minute that will show that. So clearly that's a big issue. As I mentioned, transit and active transportation will be up in the air. There will be elevators, at least for the transit side. Their current plan puts the transit on the west side of the bridge and the active transportation on the east side of the bridge, so they don't cross-connect. So if you're on a bike and you want to switch to the elevator or hop on the train, tough luck. You got to go all the way down to the ground, through a curlicue, then come back up. We're pushing on that. So that's an issue. What else is on that green sheet that I should know about?
Oh, vulnerability of the bridge due to an earthquake.
So that's an interesting question. I mean, that's supposedly one of the main purposes of this, right? But all they say about that in the EIS is they will build to the state standards. So whatever Washington or Oregon say about seismic structures, they will build to those standards. There's no analysis of earthquake resistance in the EIS itself. So it's a trust us issue. Trust us, we've already figured that out, right? I'm not a civil engineer. I don't know the answers to that. Find your friends in the state DOT. John, you have an opinion on that?
So, number one, I'm a reporter with Clark County Today, the online newspaper over in Clark County. Number one, there's a group of experts called the M9 Project. It's associated with University of Washington, and they study what's the impact if you get a full rupture of the Cascadia subduction zone at a magnitude 9.0. They have predicted a 10 to 14% chance of that level of an earthquake happening in the next 50 years, number one. More specifically to this, in the engineering world, you can design to a 2,500-year standard, which in a sense is your worst nightmare for 2,500 years happening, and I can't tell you the amount of steel and strength, but obviously that is ultimately the big one. The IBR is only planning to design the bridge to a 500-year standard. So they are selling the project. What if the big one happens, we need to spend this money, but they are not designing it to the 2,500-year maximum standard. Instead, they're designing it to a 500-year standard.
Thank you for
So
that.
it's not gonna stand with a 9, most likely.
Sure.
So I am an engineer, I'm not a civil engineer, but I kept track of what was happening with the CRC research. They measured, they drilled, they did a ton of characterization of the river down past 300 feet below the surface. So that has been looked at, it is available. it's really hard to share that stuff with the general public. Just is.
Yeah, and they do have to go down to bedrock,
Yeah.
which means there are gonna be some very large piers on top of a lot of drilled shafts.
Over 200 feet, as a
Right.
matter of fact.
Yeah, so those are gonna be big, deep structures. We know from their test borings that the stuff they have to drill through is not simple. There are a lot of boulders down there, so we think there's schedule risk and probably expense risk around that.
The I-5 freeway is from Mexico to Canada. It has tremendous amount of traffic. What's it gonna do to alleviate that?
Well, that's why they want to add lanes and rebuild the interchanges, so it's easier to get on and off. I mean, right now, something on the order of 85% of the traffic over this bridge gets on or off within that 5-mile area on either side. So only like 15 or 17% goes all the way through. So the interchanges are just as important as the mainline capacity from their point of view.
Why aren't they building more bridges rather than making everything go straight from Canada to Mexico?
Well, we do have another bridge, right? We have I-205, and in fact, if you're driving from Mexico to Canada, 205 is the defined truck route. So it's really, the trucks that are going to use this are the ones that are getting on and off on either side.
What's the tolling expectation?
Oh, that's right.
So the tolling, they are looking at 4 scenarios. And that, one of the interesting things they do here is they divide up the decision making, right? So in terms of approving the design, there's a executive steering group which consists of the project sponsors, which are the 2 ports, the 2 cities, Metro and the Southwest Washington Transportation Council, and the 2 transit agencies, so TriMet and C-Trans. So they get together, they just had a meeting this past week, and they're the ones who got to pick the MLPA, right? So they get to decide the design. They don't have to pay for it. The legislatures have to pay for it. With some help from the federal government and from tolling. But then the toll rates are delegated to the 2 state transportation commissions. So both Oregon and Washington have transportation commissions appointed by the governor, and they gave the job of picking the tolls to them. So if you want to go wring somebody's neck, plan on several stops on that path, because there's no one place short of the governor of each state to go do that. But they're looking at anything, I think, I'm sorry, I don't have that slide, but $2 to $4, and anywhere between 2 times that and 4 times that for trucks.
And what about exemption for the residents on the island?
So that's a good question. In terms of sort of the equity aspects of tolling, there's a very strong recommendation coming from a committee that Oregon has set up to look at pricing equity when we were looking at having tolling south of the river, on 205 and I-5. And they said there should be a discount for folks up to 200% of the federal poverty level of 50%. So it's going to be half off for lower income households. So far, there have been no geographic exemptions. So the same question came up on 205 for Charbonneau, right? Because Charbonneau is a neighborhood of Wilsonville that's south of the Willamette River. So if you're in Charbonneau, you have to get on I-5 to go get your groceries. Just like you guys have to do here, right?
I mean, we could go back and forth a half a dozen times a day.
Right, and so far there's no carve out for that. There's a carve out for some tribes because there are treaties with the tribes that say they have certain rights and states can't impede them. But so far there are no carve outs for specific residential areas.
So who's gonna consider that?
So that would be the transportation commissions. And they have a joint subcommittee that has 2 members of the Oregon Transportation Commission and 2 members of the Washington Transportation Commission. They just met to approve the scenarios to analyze. So they'll be getting back together again, I think, later in the fall. I don't think they've set the meeting date yet. So nobody pays attention to them. So it'd be a good thing to start paying attention to them because they're the ones you want to talk to. And back?
Those scenarios that you mentioned where they look at tolling in other places, are any of those other scenarios where it is to an island that has only access by that road exclusively? So a little different than most people
Right.
see.
Yeah, well, I mean, the closest example is Charbonneau, which is, across a river. It's not an island, but it's across a river.
Yeah, but there's some other way to get to those homes besides,
Well, you could go shop in Salem, I guess, instead of.
I don't know about you, but I can't drive across the river.
Right.
Yeah, I think when they build it, we're gonna have access to Portland, by not having to get on the bike.
That's true. You can stay on surface streets.
But, I think the way the tolling's gonna work is if you go across state, Washington, Oregon, Washington. But so if we would have to go over to Portland, then get on I-5 to go to Vancouver, then we would have to pay for that. But I think if we could shop in Portland.
Yeah, if you drove down MLK or Denver Ave through Canton, you wouldn't have to pay a toll. That's right.
I was on a call the other day with the commission. I was watching their meeting, and they were talking to some of the representatives in Washington, our state. And they said they can go as high as our toll, high as the highest toll in Washington, which is $15.
Yeah.
But that's not only was on that call, it wasn't in the other meeting. So they said it.
Yes, so
All I'm
that,
saying.
I think that was the Bi-State Legislative Committee that oversees this, which had never taken a vote on anything, so
Yeah.
they talk a lot, but they don't do anything. That $15 toll in Washington is for a section of 405 where they do dynamic tolling, which is, based on how congested it gets, tolls go up automatically. That's not what they're gonna do here. They're just gonna have time of day tolling, where if you go at rush hour, it's more than if you go at 3 in the morning. So I don't think there's a danger of getting to $15, but you're right, the law theoretically makes that possible.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. We're here.
Can you address the displacement of floating homes in the footprint?
Yeah, let's wait till we get
That's
to
part of
the,
the issue here.
let's get to the pictures and we can talk about that.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
You just mentioned what I was gonna ask. You mentioned it briefly. In other states, when there's tolls, they oftentimes have it a certain time of day. Primarily, when you're trying to go over the bridge during rush hour, it's 90% Vancouver people, live in Vancouver, work in Portland, we know when the traffic goes, and it's during rush hour. They live there because they don't have to pay state income tax, but they work to make higher money in Portland. I get it. So the toll should be just during rush hour going Portland way, and just go to the people that use it should pay for it, period. The people that use it every day and create all that traffic because they live in Vancouver and work in Portland. So isn't there a way that we can rally for that? Then
So-
none of us would have to
Hey,
pay.
that's an interesting
If you
idea.
go during the middle of the day.
Right, yeah, I have not heard the suggestion that the rush hour toll rate should be directional.
Yes,
So
of
far
course,
we're talking
they
about
do
this-
that in California.
Okay. Well, again, the state transportation commissions are the place to take that.
Okay.
Okay, let's take a couple more, and then I want to keep moving on the slides so we can look at some of the other issues. Sam, and then the woman in back.
I'm a biker, I don't have a car, and so I rely on the bus and the MAX train. But the MAX train to Vancouver seems like it's problematic in that there's no express train, and there's one track. You're not going to have an express train from Vancouver. It takes 45 minutes. You have to park and ride to downtown Vancouver, wait for the train, and then go all 20 plus stops, and then catch a bus. It just seems like it's much. Who's going to do that? And and it also it raises the effective height of the bridge for us bikers because the train is underneath on many of these
The
proposals.
double deck, the trains.
Yeah,
underneath.
the double deck.
I think they're going for the single level, so I don't know that that would be an issue. So there's 16 stops between downtown Vancouver and downtown Portland. 47 minutes is the projected time. C-Tran also runs express buses. The morning express bus they're expecting will be, I think, 59 minutes. So light rail, even with 16 stops, will still be faster than the express bus because the express bus will get stuck in the car congestion down by the I-405, I-5 split. So, yeah, I mean, if we, if some of you may remember, we had a ballot measure to do light rail to Vancouver 20 years ago. it failed, which is why they built Yellow Line to Expo Center and stopped there. If that had passed, we probably would have built half as many stations, so that we could have better travel times. So, yeah, you can convince your neighbors in North Portland they don't need half their stations. You can try that. Good luck. Yeah, back here.
So the act of collecting a toll, whether you're paying cash
Mhm.
or you've got a scanner.
There will
on
not be a
your
cash
card.
option. No,
What?
no cash options. You either have a transponder, an account, or they will take a picture of your license plate as you go by and send you a bill in the mail.
Well, the actual act though, is slowing down, going through the partition.
You don't slow down.
Slows traffic.
There's a gantry overhead with cameras. You never see it. It just happens.
Well, what about people who are traveling from one state to another? It's a one-time passage.
They'll get a bill in the mail.
Just like.
I had that happen
to
on
go
San
and see
Francisco.
it.
Yeah.
I got a bill from the San Francisco Bridge, and I thought, what's the cool thing? I didn't know. I got home and it was a bill from the.
Okay, I'd like to get through a few more slides and we'll come back to more questions after that.
Same questions.
Okay, so this is what the structure would look like right on Hayden Island. So this would be probably a little bit to the north of where we are right now.
That's a single deck.
This is the single deck, yeah. So it's pretty big. So this is from their roll map. This is the double deck design. So you can see that the green is the active transportation path. You can see it disappears under the bridge as you leave the island. Same thing with the light rail. It goes underneath the bridge. The single deck, it looks more like this. So you can see that the active transportation light rail are to the sides of the bridge. This is what I would guess we're going to get. Here's a path that's going to curl underneath. That's how you get from the active transportation back down to ground level. Unclear how many curves there may be in that. They're kind of
Okay,
hiding.
where are we at right now on that map?
We're over here
We're
somewhere.
at the bottom of the map in the lower left-hand corner, yeah?
Yeah.
See the
Okay.
L-shaped?
So that's the northern.
There we
Yeah,
are.
that's right,
Yeah,
that's it.
okay, here we are.
That's right.
North check.
Right.
So the bridge is further that, the
West of the first bridge.
Yeah. Yeah, you can see the old bridges are there. You can see the structure of the old bridges. So it's a little bit above it.
So, how many lanes are there across there, right where, North Hayden, or not North Hayden Island Drive, but Tomahawk Island Drive goes under the freeway?
Right, so how many lanes on the freeway or on the street?
On the freeway.
On the freeway?
How many lanes do we have to go under?
So either 4 or 5 on each structure, so 8 or 10.
Because the CRC, there were 18 lanes.
Yeah, because they had
I mean,
more
in-
ramps. That's because they had the full interchange, so there were more ramps.
Yeah, but we have to include the arterial bridge also.
The arterial bridge is over here. We'll go back to that. So the arterial bridge is over here, so there would be, again, 8 or 10 here. Then this is, so that's a ramp getting to Marine Drive. And this is the arterial bridge over here. So there's 8 or 10, then 2 ramps, and the arterial, so that's 13, 14?
But
That's with the double.
probably 16 or 18. I mean, each ramp
The ramps
would
are
be
2 lanes.
lanes.
Yeah.
So
okay.
there's 2 lanes for each ramp, that's 4.
Okay.
And arterial is 2 more lanes, plus the active transportation makes that about 7 or 8 more lanes.
I don't think it's quite that wide, but okay. Yeah.
How are they planning to take 3 lanes to 12, 16 lanes, back down to 3 lanes, and not end up with the same mess that we've got right now?
Right, that's a great question.
Moving the congestion point.
Right.
Okay, I have a question. Show me where you would get on the freeway, going south.
Right, we'll get to that, I got a slide just for that. So we got a video where you can sort of see the whole thing. So this is the single level with one auxiliary lane. This is the configuration this video shows. There are a whole set of videos on the project website that show you the different variations. So that was Victory Boulevard. Heading up to Marine Drive now. This will be the new Marine Drive interchange. And then you can see the whole set of lanes going across the harbor. So that's what will take out floating homes, right, either side. I don't know the number, sorry.
Here we go. Where do you get to?
Here's your transit station over here. That's where the active transportation comes down there with another ramp you can take over there for active transportation.
And I don't see where you get on
Yeah.
Relay.
We'll get there. We'll get there, I promise.
Looks like we're going the other direction.
We are. Yeah. Trust me, I got a video for that. Then we get into Vancouver. You can see this is a waterfront transit station. It'll be 100 feet in the air. The big curly queue for bikes down here. This is with the C Street ramps, I think, with that loop. Look at all that asphalt and concrete.
How long is it gonna take them to build this?
12, 15 years. 6 for the bridge itself.
Isn't it 35?
Really?
2035? Isn't it
Yeah,
2035?
something like that. It goes all the way up to the 39th and SR 500, so I won't make you sit through all that. Okay. So here's the one you want about getting on the bridge to go south. Okay. So this is the movement you're going to make right here. You're going to get in there. You're going to loop underneath the bridge and then get up on Marine Drive.
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So this is going to be as much of a show as it is getting off the Marine Drive and going around the big
Right.
drive around
Do the same thing in
circle as you
reverse.
sit there for 45 minutes.
Well, how long it'll take depends on the congestion. So they haven't published numbers for that.
I've lived here for 40
Right.
years,
Yeah.
so I know there's congestion.
Right. So that would be a great EIS comment to submit.
Well, it's ridiculous.
Okay, tell them so.
I will.
All right.
Absolutely.
Okay.
So stupid. They don't live.
All right. And still in the video.
That's insane.
Okay, so these are some of the issues that Just Crossing Alliance is tracking. You know, we'd love to see more alternatives, like the tunnel model back there.
Regional rail.
Regional rail would be great. We'd love to see fewer interchanges. You know, I'd rather not rebuild Marine Drive. I'd rather not have 4 new interchanges in Vancouver. That's a lot of money that's getting spent for this. And by the way, the Oregon funding for this came out of general fund bonding. So that could be building schools, it could be building hospitals, public safety, lots of different things that can be used for it. It isn't coming from gas taxes. We're watching the active transportation connection. So for example, they end the bike path at that riverfront station in Vancouver. So it's not like you can keep going and go down a nice gradual slope. They're going to make you get off in that curly queue. On the transit way.
Wheelchairs too, isn't it?
Yes.
Wheelchairs go down that
Yep.
curly queue.
Yep. Under ADA, they can do up to a 4.5%, or they can do 5.5, they're going to
Wow.
build to 4.5. So
That's
it'll be,
quite-
it's like half a mile of curly queue to get up.
Going down would be quite a ride going up.
Right. They're planning to build the light rail path with rails on embedded on concrete ties, so you could not run a bus or emergency vehicle on the transit way. We think that's stupid. But, you know, who knows? C-Tran might want to run bus rapid transit over this bridge in the future. We should have a space for it. You know, huge freeway. They're gonna have 12.
the microphone.
Oh, sorry, they're gonna have 12-foot shoulders on either side of the freeway. They wanna run the express bus in the shoulder, but that's really just land banking for future lanes. We've talked about the bridge height. Yeah, every additional car is more air quality issues. Lots of impacts on the salmon in the river. Visual impacts, noise impacts, park and rides. There's the Washington State Health Department is leading a health analysis of this project. They're going to publish that like a week before the comment period ends, so we're waiting for it so we can jump on it. But if we're lucky, they'll have an executive summary out a little bit earlier. So lots of stuff to focus on here.
It's the heat sink, the whole country.
Oh yeah, it would be huge heat island effect. This, and in their climate section, they project that significant number of summer days, the temperatures on the bridge will be, just the air around the bridge will be 100 degrees. So with the concrete soaking up heat, be even more. And they're like looking at 10 days a year over 115. So we're hoping they will shade the active transportation path, because otherwise nobody's going to use it in the summer. Okay, got a little more time for questions and answers, and then I'll shift to the comment process, and we'll talk about how to comment. Pam.
I just want to let everybody know that I've actually read a lot of the SCIS. I need to get a life. But the manufactured home community has been mentioned in there, which was kind of exciting. I was so excited to have us mentioned. But how we were mentioned is that we were specifically mentioned to have adverse air quality and noise pollution directed our way just because of the way that the river bends just slightly. So the manufactured home community is going to be impacted greatly by noise and air pollution during this 10-year process of building this bridge. So anyone from the manufactured home community, make sure that you drive that point home in your comments.
Marty.
I don't hear anything about high occupancy vehicle lanes. Is there anything like that addressed?
Nothing in the EIS about that, no.
Yeah, because I know Vancouver, up by 500, is putting high occupancy lanes in their plan. The other question I've got is, what about Albina? And the federal government just recently did not fund their 5 lanes or whatever it is that they were looking for. How does that affect us?
Right, so the second part of that question was about what's going on at Rose Quarter.
Yeah.
I've spent the last 7 years of my life opposing that, so I have a point of view. But they had applied for a $750 million federal grant. They didn't get it, which means they will be looking for money from the legislature in the 2025 session. ODOT is so broke, I think it's going to be hard for them to get it. So, the campaign I spend most of my time on No More Freeways hopes that they will just build the caps and not widen it, but they have not admitted that yet. So let's cross our fingers. Yes, Ben.
In various plans that they're considering, is there a minimum distance from occupied residences that they've planned that it has to have, both when it's running and when it's being built? And second, do they plan to build any walls along it with sound dampening devices the way they do along I-5 as you continue north in Vancouver? They have a lot of areas with that.
Yeah.
They're going to provide us with those as well.
So I'll tell you that they are planning to take some properties because they're expanding. I don't know of a buffer distance. I don't think I've seen that in the EIS, and I honestly don't remember about sound walls.
Right?
Yeah.
Some level.
Yeah. There's a section on sound in the EIS, so I pointed that out. I'm afraid I don't remember the details, so there could be sound walls. I honestly don't remember.
But as far as you know, there's no limitation on how close to an occupied residence.
Well, if there is, it would mean they just go buy the residence, right? If there's a residence of the way, they're just going to buy it.
I realize that, but I'm
Right.
just saying there must be some number.
Yeah.
Distance.
There may be, and I'm sorry, I don't remember that detail.
Me?
And I hate to ask this, but can you go back to the slide that showed the off-ramps going into Hayden Island on the primarily residential side, which is the Tomahawk side? Because it looked like there's now 2 ramps. Now there's 1 ramp that comes straight into into our neighborhoods, so to speak. And then the other ramp wraps around and goes over by the hotel. Let's see, what are those two ramps coming straight down, it looks like, at the bottom? Those two right in the middle on the bottom, heading into Jansen Beach Avenue.
So these are freeway ramps
No,
going to the
the
Marine
exit
Drive.
ramps.
Those are
What
roads.
streets are those are roads, those are not exit ramps?
Right,
No.
so
The black, like an H right there.
So the black part are surface streets, I think.
Yes.
Okay,
There's
so
no connection.
they're enlarging those streets? Is that what they're doing?
Well, what you've got are the ramps to and from Vancouver, so. I'm sorry, the laser pointer doesn't.
On the
work
bottom.
On the screen.
Right in front of you.
Over here.
On the lower, no, go to the right.
Yeah.
Right there, into the neighborhood on the island.
Those
We
are
live
just
along
two
the
black
side.
lines.
These
Right
are
there.
surface
What are
streets.
those?
These are surface streets.
So why are they so highlighted? Are they going to be made larger, like busy?
Yeah, I think they'll be adding bike lanes to some of them. There may be other improvements.
Are they taking out businesses there as well?
Not that I know of. The business displacement is, basically either side of the freeway.
According to this map, I believe that just means new pavement.
Okay.
That
That sounds right.
highlighted color.
Yeah.
They're-
new pavement.
New pavement? Okay.
Yeah, but this is the ramp from Vancouver down to, I forget the street that goes behind Home Depot, right? I forget what it's called. And the same thing coming back to Vancouver. So that's where you get on and off if you're going
So
to
where do
and
you
from
exit
Vancouver.
now on that side? Currently, there's a ramp that you exit to get onto the island, and it comes straight there, right at the Chevron station.
Right, and that will go all the way down to the street behind Home Depot.
Jansen Drive.
Jansen Drive. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Oh, there it is, Jansen Drive.
So are you coming from the north down?
Yeah, so if you're going to or from Vancouver, you're gonna get on and off at Jansen Drive.
And what if you're coming from Portland?
You're going Portland, you're going over the arterial bridge and getting out at the Marine Drive interchange.
And then coming all the way back?
Same thing, get off at Marine Drive, loop around, take that arterial bridge.
On that ulterior route? Okay.
Yeah.
We're trying to figure out, where's the fire department, where's the park on what?
Fire department. I'm not familiar with those locations.
Oh.
Pam, can you help me out?
On Tomahawk Island Drive.
Yeah, okay, so this is Tomahawk, and,
No.
possibly good news is Tomahawk will go through underneath the bridge where it doesn't connect today.
So you guys, those big roads, we don't recognize them because we don't think of them as being very big right now. And most importantly, I'm gonna use my cane. This is Oxford Streets right here. And so that's Tomahawk Island Drive. So your fire department is right here under the word Island and Drive, right there.
So what happens to Tomahawk, does it widen?
Well, I think it will be widened in the first couple of sections there. But you're right, there's no plans for widening it out to the rest of the residential
What about
area.
the condos that are right on
They will not be, we have got no information about them being displaced.
There's a map, a section of the EIS that has maps of all the things that will be displaced. Stuff that will get lost.
And we have, even the road in front of Oxford Suites, we think of it as kind of sleepy, with Taco Bell and Burger King. But that will be the major way to get to the northbound ramp to go north, is to come in front of Oxford Suites, in front of Floor and Decor, and then take a right onto the on-ramp going north. So we're gonna have some bigger streets.
And when you go down this way east, that's Tomahawk, right here on the corner.
Right, Tomahawk Island Drive, right, and then that's the other one, the other section of the beach is North Hayden Island Drive.
So the Tomahawk takes you all the way to the end of the island.
It sure does, yep, it gets smaller as it goes to the
Can I
end.
ask one quick question about an area we haven't really touched on, the Marine Drive area? So if, for instance, the residents here have to get on the arterial bridge, go to Marine Drive to go south, right? There's no entrance onto I-5 from the island going south.
Correct. That's correct.
Is the design of the Marine Drive area designed designed with the intent to ease any of the already ridiculous traffic in the Marine Drive area for people trying to get on I-5.
Well, they would say it is, but that's why they built all those ramps and connections over there, and, you know, it's essentially a mini Cloverleaf
It's a
interchange
little,
over there.
just like all those ramps are a little tough to follow, so like,
Yeah.
as it currently looks, there's some streamlined
Mm-hmm.
for people who are staying on I-5 or people who are getting on I-5 from further south. But the Marine Drive area, anyone coming from the east of Marine Drive has to go that way, right?
It's okay.
Yeah.
Well, I guess not. I guess they don't know. Yeah, they do.
Marty?
The Columbia River Crossing, Hayden Island plan.
Okay, hold on, you guys, one at a time.
Hayden Island plan was put together as a result of expectations of the Columbia River Crossing being built. How does the Hayden Island plan fit into this?
They have a section where they talk about that. They would say it's consistent, that it matches. I have not tried to analyze that in detail.
The Hayden Island
It's in the SIS.
It calls for residential and retail development in the mall. So some of this development is we're gonna lose some stuff in the mall, we just know it, sort of. The mall is gonna look different. And so that's where we'll be, they'll launch into the more residential retail there. And that's another reason for the light rail station on Hayden Island as well.
When you say lose some of part of the
Yeah.
mall, do you mean like along I-5 right over here?
Well, when I say lose part of the mall, I think it's going to be difficult for businesses to sustain their business there. I think we'll
On this side of center?
Oh, well, there's going to be all sorts of businesses that are closing.
All of Lottery Row goes away, right?
Lottery Row will all be gone, McDonald's will be gone. Those are all on the chopping block because the highway is going all over the top of it. No, but the mall will change. It will change based on how business is attracted to the area or not attracted to it.
Ma'am, back here.
Okay, you guys, no more. We have to, we're kind of getting all frustrated here. One at a time, you guys.
So, I'm kind of new to all this, but have they looked at with the new roads and getting on and off the island, the length of time change that it's gonna be? I just worry more about like emergency medical services. I know we have the fire department, but transporting patients off the island when needed, how much of a delay is that gonna cause?
I have not seen an analysis of how long it will take to do that maneuver to get to Marine Drive and get on. If it's in the AES, I haven't spotted it yet. Sam?
Could you explain No More Freeways and your vision?
Sure. So, No More Freeways is the organization I spend most of my time on. And our view of the world is climate focused. It basically says in a world where climate change is obvious, every dollar we spend on widening a freeway is a dollar we should have spent on some form of sustainable transportation instead. So we're about reducing reliance on cars.
But what are you going to do about the congestion?
Get people on transit, build really good transit.
Do you think transit is going to go through a fundamental change with autonomy?
We certainly hope so. We're out there promoting transit, and honestly, we got to price the roads to give people a reason to get on transit. So some form of tolling.
How are you going to get people on transit when they're afraid? When they're afraid to get on transit? My friend was here from Texas, and she said that's the criminals' form of transportation. And it kind of is.
So we're getting a little far afield from this project, but what I would say is what we've done is basically push our mental health system to put people on the street, and that's the problem we have to solve. And transit is just a symptom of that problem. It's a fundamentally healthcare system problem.
Wouldn't that be first and then worry about light rail?
Is that federal funding that they're after?
So,
Anybody else have any questions for Chris?
if not, I want to go on to the comment process and make sure you all know how to comment. So the IVR has a bunch of ways to comment, and we'll talk about those. But first, I want to talk about the way we prefer that you use. Okay, so IVR has some comment rules. One is no hyperlinks, so you can't just put a link in your comment and say, go read this. They won't accept that. They don't want video. So if you have a video, you're supposed to play it into their voicemail system and they'll transcribe it. It's kind of ironic because they have spent millions of dollars making slick videos to sell this product to us, but they won't watch our videos. They were initially not going to allow attachments on comments, and we pushed them and made them do that. So you can, if you're using email, you can use attachments, but we have a way to make that easy for you. So we at Just Crossing Alliance have created our own comment form, and that's the QR code for it. That's the card you got. And the reason we'd like you to use ours is, we'll submit it to IBR via email with any attachments. Our form takes attachments, theirs doesn't. And we will keep a copy and put it in the public archive. So if you want to see what other people are saying, or you want other people to see what you're saying, use ours, because all those comments wind up on our website. IBR isn't going to publish those comments until the final EIS a year from now. So they'll respond to your comment in a year. We'll at least show the world what you were talking about right now. So we'd really encourage you to use our form, and let me take a second and show you our form. So on our website, you'll find it up here in the menu for, where the mouse go? Sorry. Okay, so up here in the public comment resources menu, we've got our comment form. Up here in a second. And the QR code will take you right there with your phone, so it's easy. We have suggestions about things you might want to talk about. These are the issues we're tracking, but then you get down here to the form. These are all the same things IBR would ask you. And the things we add is we have a topic area, so if you want to say, hey, I want to talk about Hayden Island issues, we've got a topic area for that. So you can say it's about Hayden Island, so it makes it easier to read the comments. And then we also take attachments, which they don't. So we think there are a lot of advantages to use our comment form. If you don't want to, if you want to use their comment form, back. Here are all their official ways to submit comments. So you can email to this address. You can leave a voicemail. You want to send them something in the mail, you can do that. And if English is not your first language and you want to submit in some other language, they will translate that for you. So that's a decent thing for them to do. But again, we think it's more effective and helpful if you use ours, but your choice.
Hey, Chris.
Yeah.
The flyover videos that you showed, are they readily available that we can grab?
Yes, those flyover videos are on the IBR website. They're also on YouTube. So either way. Ellen?
He's been trying to raise his hand for about
Oh, I'm sorry.
the whole time.
Okay.
He has something he wants to
So
add.
I haven't heard anyone talk about this, but we're all paying $1 billion in housing preservation and creation bonds between Multnomah and the city of Portland. And if we're going to, during the construction and then after the tolls, make it way more expensive and way more inconvenient to live on the island, then how many rentals are we wiping out? How many people are gonna stop living here? How are we recreating that housing? And isn't that a tool for us to use to get what we want? And additionally, if all of these stores that don't get shut down depend on a lot of people on the island, so if we lose more people on the island, that's gonna impact the businesses too.
So that is not analyzed in the EIS. I mean, they talk about the properties they'll take and losing that housing, but in terms of sort of changing the market desirability of housing on the island, they do not analyze that. I would suggest there may be a slightly sunnier view of that, which is you'll have access to transit that will take you to 2 downtowns. So if you don't insist on driving,
I just know reality, like a lot of these places here are rentals. And a lot of the places here are owned by people that've been here for 30 years. People aren't gonna rebuy those houses if it's this much of a hassle. It costs $10 every time your friend wants to come over and then leave. And a lot of people will just rent other apartments because they're not gonna pay $10 to go to work and back every day, or go to the grocery store every day. So we will in effect be taking a lot of housing off the market.
that would be a great comment to submit. A few commenting tips. use your own words. We have lots of talking points, but it's going to be more authentic if you put it in your voice, talk about what you're concerned about. If you have multiple topics for your comment, we would suggest creating a separate comment for each one. They're more likely to pay attention to it that way. And to the extent that you can point to a section of the EIS and say, this is what I'm talking about, they're more likely to pay attention to it. But some things aren't in the EIS, like that isn't, so don't let that be a limitation. And that is the end of my prepared remarks. I'm happy to stay here and answer more questions. If you haven't looked at Dave's model of the tunnel, please do that.
Good question. Last time this came up, it was fought, and I know there was a group of people that chipped in money to publicize this to the general public. Is your Just Crossing Alliance doing that now?
So, yeah, I'll interpret that as saying, will there be a lawsuit? Right? Because that's the way you fight it, is you tell them they got the EIS wrong. Last time around, the opposition, there was a lawsuit out of Lewis and Clark, the Environmental Law Center there. It was more about the fish issues. I don't know if that's going to get refiled or not. The group leading this last time was the Coalition for Livable Future, which doesn't exist anymore, which is why we had to create JCA. There's a wide diversity of organizations in JCA, so I doubt that JCA as an entity would sue, but there are organizations within JCA that file lawsuits all the time, including mine, No More Freeways. 1,000 Friends files lawsuits over land use stuff. So I think there are organizations that potentially do that. You can't file a lawsuit until the final EIS comes out. So that decision point is still like a year away.
What about money for getting just the word out? I don't think anybody's really aware of how big this bridge is and all of what you just talked about here. Is there any publicity being put out besides just a meeting or two here?
Yeah, so we have hired an organizer for the public comment period who is reaching out mostly through our member organizations.
I'm going to talk about the tunnel if you want to stay and listen to what I have to say.
So, we're not spending millions, but we're spending a few tens of thousands to get the word out.
You guys, thank you very much for turning in some comments. Ellen's out in the hall. I've got some here in my hot little hand. Pat's writing no, N-O.
Okay, and Dave will be telling you everything you want to know about the tunnel back in the corner.
Thank you for being here, Dave. Chris, thank you again. Thank you. Let's give
Thank
Chris
you.
a round of applause. We appreciate you being here.
Yeah, I'm Dave Rill, and I was asked by a couple engineers to put together a model of an immersed tube tunnel. Up in Vancouver, BC, they're going under the Fraser River with an immersed tube tunnel, and it's costing $3 billion, about a third of what they cost for this massive bridge. And it will be completed in 6 years. This bridge that they're building is going to be 3035 when it's done, after spending $7 billion. But I talked to these two engineers, Bob Wallace and Robert Ortland, and they gave me the figures, and I said, give me the dimensions, I'll make a model. So the model I made was something that IBR said it was impossible to connect a tunnel to SR-14. Well, we figured it out. We can come in by Huson and Larry and just go north with an immersed area, a tunnel underneath, and then come out under the railroad track and connect up east of Port Vancouver. But after we think about it, why can't we just have an immersed tube tunnel just for I-5 traffic and keep with our existing structure of off-ramps and on-ramps to I-5 and keep the I-5 bridge intact, because it's going to cost $150 million to tear it down when they say to repair it, and they have to repair the decks on it, which is about $200 million
to repair what they have. And if we do have a big, a 9 earthquake, they're not guaranteeing this $7 billion bridge is gonna stand. But getting back to building this $7 billion bridge, they have earthquake. They say they're gonna have 124 piles that are supporting this bridge, and they have to go down 300 feet with these piles. And in 2012, they did some exploratory drilling, and the drill bit broke, and they quit going. In 2012, they said they ran out of money, so they didn't go all the way down. Well, in 2024, they put 8 exploratory drill bits down, and only one of them went all the way down to 300 feet. They would go down to 100 feet, some of them 75 feet, and they would break the drill bits because it was hitting these boulders from Missoula floods, which are big boulders that may be as big as an SUV or maybe bigger. And so they don't mention that. If you look at on this report, the geotechnical report in May of 2024, it tells them about all the problems they had drilling it. And they want to spend money to put 124 piles under that bridge to support the bridge. That's going to be quite a cost overrun. So what I'm recommending is we just have an immersed tube tunnel just for I-5 traffic. And another alternative, they're talking, it has to have transit. They keep talking about light rail. Well, I worked in light rail for TriMet for 20 years. It's good for a downtown area like Portland, but it isn't going to be good for Vancouver, because from Vancouver to downtown Portland, it's 35 minutes. And you know what goes across the bridge right now? It's Cascades. It's a passenger train that goes from Vancouver to Portland in 15 minutes. And IBR did not study that type of passenger service. It's transit, but it's not light rail. It's heavy rail, and it's a passenger train that is used on tracks that already exist. So it's a lot cheaper to build our regional rail system. So we've got rails that go all the way to Longview on Burlington Northern, the center, following the Columbia going north, then it follows along east and west all the way to Stevenson, and you can get to Boise. Well, you can't get to Boise, but you can get to Pendleton with the tracks that are already there. So all you have to do is just buy the passenger trains that they look similar to light rail, but they're heavy rail. And the reason that light rail can't be used on freight rail because they can't withstand a forward collision. But a regional rail train can run on the regular tracks that are there. So I'm also supporting regional rail, and it should be in your comments that they need to study regional rail. The original study excluded the Burlington Northern Railroad because they said it could only be researched up to half a mile upstream and half a mile downstream. So they excluded that railroad track, which should have been in the study. I'll go back and explain how this immersed tunnel can be built for $7 billion if you want to stick around, and I'll show you the model I made. Any questions? Any questions?